Okay. Sorry about this. So now, actually, if you go back to your web server and you hit refresh, you'll see hello world, right? So now we actually have a slightly useful web server. And that's pretty cool because it actually only took 3 lines of code, and it's actually very simple to understand. Yeah.
What is the string /? Mean?
Yeah. So basically, if you look at this this URL here, there is an implicit slash that follows it. Okay. And so you've probably seen URLs like blah 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 slash new slash whatever, stuff like that, right? Okay. If there isn't anything that follows after the web address, like after the server's name, then it's implied that it's just a slash. And so actually I could type this in, and it Chrome hides the slash because it's kind of useless, but yeah. So that's cool. We've created a page, or we've created a server that can respond to one URL, right? But what we want ideally is to be able to add multiple routes. And so let's actually go ahead and do that. So let's do this. So we can follow the same format as before. Cool. And also you'll notice that the server will restart automatically every time you save the file, which is useful. So yeah, this page works as before. But if you go to /create, it will respond differently, right? And so this is actually the kind of the very core of what you do when you're coding for a web backend, is that you route different URLs to different types of logic based on what was requested. And so today what we're going to be doing is that as we go along and we learn the basics of web dev, we're also going to be creating a blogging engine, a very basic blogging engine. And so it'll be pretty cool. By the time you are done with this workshop, you'll have created something that is actually pretty useful and is fully functional. And so that's the kind of reason why I've asked you to create a create page. Later on, we'll be filling this in to be a page where you type out a blog post or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We've created these URLs. We've created 2 different URLs, right? And actually, we can keep going. Okay, 3, 4. The problem is that hard coding all of these URLs every time you want to add a page is kind of tedious. So, sorry. What you want to do is that a lot of the time you want to respond to a URL that follows a somewhat general pattern. Let's say that you want to access a post with a particular ID, right, for a blogging engine. So what you do is that you can create routes that map to not just static strings like /create and /, but you can also create them to match general patterns. So let's go ahead and create a route that we'll later fill in to respond to requests for particular posts in our blogging engine, right? So we'll go /posts /post ID. Sorry. And so you'll notice something slightly different about So you notice something slightly different about this route that we've created here. It's that there's some stuff, there's like this post _ ID that has been enclosed in these angle brackets. And what you're telling Flask is that this post _ ID can be anything, all right? So it's saying that when somebody requests /posts /anything, match that and save it into a variable called post _ ID, which will get passed to us in the function that we create here, right? So we'll name this function getPost, and as an argument, Flask will pass us whatever the user typed into the post ID, right? And we can access it like you would any regular Python argument. So here, you requested post ID, and then we can put a %s, and then do some basic string interpolation. And now we can go to the server, and if we go to /posts/foobar, you'll notice that whatever I typed in after post/, the server actually received as an argument to this getPost function and was able to, in the response, reply with whatever I typed. So I can actually go ahead and change this. So I can change this from foobar to barbaz, and that'll change. So this is actually one of the ways that your web server can be dynamic, is that instead of having a fixed set of URLs and fixed set of routes that it responds to, it can actually respond to more general patterns. Yeah.
So I can't really see what's before that post ID.
Which one? Oh, right here?
Before the
You
post ID.
requested? You requested.
You requested post ID.
Oh, next to the return on line 17?
Which
Yeah.
line?
It's a string.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the
Oh,
syntax,
yeah.
I don't know if 61A covered this for any reason. This is just Python string interpolation. It just says fill in post ID into the spot where you see the %s. Right? But yeah. Okay, anybody lost any questions so far? Cool. So you can play around with it. It's pretty fun because now you've created a web server and you type in random stuff into the URL and it'll type or spit that random stuff back out at you. So that's one way to get data from the user. But there are actually two other ways to get data from the user. And getting data from the user is actually one huge part of backend web development, because if you want to build a login form or you want to build a message box or anything like that, you want to retrieve what the user has to supply to you and then do something useful with it. So let's go ahead and change this top route here in our home page to get some data from the user. And actually, the way that we're going to do that is something called a query string. Has anybody heard that term before? Okay, so you might not have heard it by that name, but you've probably seen it anytime you've used the web. Basically, a query string is something like this. Let's say you have a URL, right? And we'll call this whatever. It can be whatever. The query string is something that looks like this. It has a question mark and let's say some variable name and some value. And you've probably seen this when you've gone to like Google search and you type in your search query and you'll see it in the URL of the search results. So basically what this allows a user to specify is a set of key value pairs. So it's kind of like a Python dictionary. So you have a key and you have a value. And so you say, well, this key is equal to this value. In this case, what I'm saying is that my name is equal to Sridhar. And so the browser interprets, or the server interprets anything in the URL after a question mark to be part of the query string. And so this is one way that a server can retrieve data from the user based on the URL. So let's go ahead and figure out how to use these query strings in our web server. So what we do is that Python provides us a useful request object, and you can use it magically inside inside your function. And so it's kind of like a Python dictionary in that you give it a key and you get back a value, but it's unlike a Python dictionary in that you don't use the same like square bracket syntax. You do something, you do request.args.get, and then you pass in the name of the key that you want, and then it will return to you the value that we can store in a variable. And now that we've retrieved that into a variable, we can actually do the same thing that we did before, which is to make this page a little bit more dynamic. by saying hello to whoever requested us. So let's go ahead and do that. Did everyone get the syntax? I'll give you a little bit to catch up. Let's see. I would love to do that. I wish I knew how to. Okay. This better? Okay. I was surprised I would. Alright. So yeah, this request object contains basically the information about what the client requested. It contains a variety of things, but the args corresponds to the part of the request that is the query string. So let's go back to our web page or our web server right now and go to this URL. So let's say, yeah, so we created this in the route / which is our home page. So do localhost :5000 / and then a question mark and then name equals and literally any name. It can be your name even. And hit enter. Yay, there's my name, right? And so I can change it to whatever I want, and it will spit that back out. And so this is actually how like Google search works, is that when you type in something into your search box, you'll see in your address bar that it is part of the query string of the search results. Cool. So that's all well and good, but if you've done any kind of front-end web development before, okay, actually, by the way, before I proceed, any questions? Is anybody confused about what's going on syntactically or conceptually? Yeah.
You don't have to rerun the command Python server.py every time you
That's a good question. So basically, it's because of line 22 here. So app.debug is true. When it's in debug mode, Flask will be watching for changes in that file and restart it every time it changes. But yeah, you wouldn't be doing this on a real web server. Cool. Anybody else confused about anything? All right. Great. So this is fun and all. Okay, we've been creating these Python functions that like take things as arguments and then string interpolate them and return them back. But if you've done any kind of front-end web development, you'll notice that something is a little bit off. Mainly, where is all of our HTML, right? Like you spent all this time learning all this like crazy markup language. We're not even using it. That's because we haven't gotten to it yet. So Flask allows you to return strings, and that's cool. But most of the time, you want to return real web pages, and real web pages mean writing HTML with your fancy, paragraph tags and H1s and whatnot. So you can do this in Flask with something called templating. And templating allows Flask to respond to requests with an HTML page, but it's a little bit of a special kind of HTML. Mainly, it's HTML that you can add Python logic to. And this is useful because you can take data from the user, and depending on what that data is and what the user supplies, you can make the page look different. And so let's go ahead and change this, our home page, which currently says hello to whoever requests it, and let's go ahead and convert that to be HTML based. So what you should do is go into the directory that, oops, okay, we won't do that. Go into the directory that is running your Python server, and kill your server or open a new window, and create a new directory called templates. It should be empty for now, right? And then you can do this, if you're not familiar with command line, you can go ahead and do this in like your favorite GUI. And then let's create a new file, and we'll call it home.html. I'm using the touch command in the command line, but you don't have to do this. You can just create it using your text editor, right? And this will be a blank file. And now you should have, right next to your server.py, you should have a directory called templates. And in templates, there should be a blank file called home.html. Everyone good? Okay, so basically, there's a kind of a structure to this like directory that I had you create. When you run your Python server.py, Flask will look in that same directory where server.py is running for a directory called templates, and that's where you'll store all the HTML files that you want to serve. So let's go ahead and write some HTML. Let's so up top is, if anyone's confused, is my home.html, and then down here is my server.py. And so in order to respond to the client with this HTML, what we want to do is, instead of returning a string, Flask supplies us a useful function called render template. And you can call it using something like this, right? And then you specify the name of the HTML file that you want to render. Rendering just means like serving it out. And so if you actually go ahead and run python server.py again, oh, I'm in the wrong directory. And we restart this. Cool. So unlike before, which had just plain text, we now have a little bit of markup. It's not the prettiest web page in the world, but you definitely get the idea that you can do something cool with it. So before we had a page that took this name variable and then rendered it onto the back into the page. So let's figure out how to do this using templating. It's not quite as easy as it was earlier, where we were just using string interpolation, but it's almost as easy. Basically, what we want to do is in this render template function that Flask provides us, we can pass in a keyword argument, and now inside our HTML file, we can do something cool. I mentioned before that a template is not quite HTML. It looks like HTML, but you can add some Python logic to it, right? And so let's go ahead and do that. Just follow along for now, and then if actually.
Yeah, if any of you guys ever need help, you can just like silently raise your hand and I will listen to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Just make sure that promotional is in the public section. Yes. Okay, yeah.
Cool. So I'll let you guys catch up and copy this down, but this should look kind of familiar if you've done HTML before, but you might be wondering, what's all this stuff in this like squiggly brackets and percent signs? Basically, this is Flask's templating language, and it allows you to mix Python-looking code with your HTML. What's happening here is actually, does somebody want to venture and take a guess what's happening? What would happen?
If there's a name, you say hello name. Otherwise, you say hello.
Yeah, it's almost exactly like how a Python function would run, except that now you've kind of put that into your HTML, so your HTML is a little bit smarter. And so we've passed in a variable name into this template on line 10 here, because we said, well, name is equal to this variable name. And so now we have access to it in home.html, and we can check it out. We can check if it's set or not, and then do something accordingly. Let's actually go and go for a trial run, right? So go back to your server, and don't pass anything. Just go to /, and it should say hello world. And if I pass in my name like before, it should say my name, right? So our HTML is pretty smart. It knows whether we've passed something to it or not and acts accordingly. Is everyone caught up? Anyone confused about how templating works or what it's used for? Back to the code? Yeah. Okay. Who needs more time to like copy this down? Yeah.
So if you need more variables, you just like add more variables into the tree statement in the bracket.
Yes, exactly. And you can name them whatever you want, and you can pass in as many variables as you want. Oh, also important note. So how did we actually like get the name to print out onto the page? Any variable that you want to evaluate onto the page, you surround in these double squiggly brackets, and then what Flask does is takes that and finds its value and puts that onto the page. If we didn't do that, so if we got rid of these squiggly brackets and we just put the variable named name, it wouldn't work. It would actually just say literally the characters NAME. So if you want it to be evaluated, you put in these. Everyone good?
Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, set up. Okay, yeah. If you want to render a template in a separate directory other than the templates directory,
I was trying to put it into a directory, which is
okay. Can you help her out? So yeah, that might just be a weird like issue. Well, yeah. Cool. Someone else. Stephanie, you have a question? What's up? It's not working. Are you having the same problem as her, where the templates are not rendering?
So you can't put a space between names and name. That was the problem.
I don't know how Python syntax works. That might be the case. You should be able to put a space. Okay. Sweet. So, okay, so now we know how to create templates with a little bit of logic. Let's go a little bit further. So templating gives you a lot more than simply spitting out variable names or variables onto a page. It allows you to do almost everything that you can do in Python. And one of the big things that you do is looping. So if we were to pass a template a list of things, like a Python list, we'd actually be able to loop over those and do something for every element in that list. Let's go ahead and figure out how we can do that. All right. So over here, let's get rid of this name. It was fun saying hello to ourselves, but it's time to move on. And since this is a blogging engine, let's create a list called posts, which is just a list of posts that we'd like to have, right? And right now we're just going to hard code all of our posts and make up some fun titles. Later on we'll figure out how to create those dynamically. But for now, create a list of strings. The strings can be cool. And let's change what we call this thing, right? So you should have a list of strings. Presumably they are headlines for your blog posts. And pass it into render template the same way that you did with your name. And cool. So time to delete all this stuff. Because this is our blog, let's create an HTML list of each of these posts. So create a UL, which is an unordered list. And now in this, we want to populate it with all of our posts. And so we do this using looping. And it's a similar syntax, right? So we have these control statements that are in this squiggly brackets. And what we do is we say for post in posts, right? This should look very familiar to you if you've used Python before. And now inside this, between these two statements, whatever we put will get run once for every iteration of the list, right? And so what we want to do here is we want to fill this UL with list items. And inside these list items, we just want to put the name of the post, right? So this is kind of what it looks like. Again, I'm using these double squiggly brackets to evaluate the value of post at that time. Any questions so far about how looping works in template? Cool. So now actually let's go back to our web page and let's try out what our thing looks like. So we've taken our list of post names and we've managed to create a new list element for every single item in that list. Right? And so we're going to use this later on to create a kind of a directory of all the blog posts that we create. Pretty useful and pretty neat. So far, the two main things you've learned so far about templating is how to do if and else and also looping. There's a lot more. You can actually type in real Python functions in here and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But these two basics will get you a long way through. Anyone not caught up, or is this not working for somebody? It's not working for you? Okay. So if anybody runs into problems, we're actually going to I'm actually going to go into a little bit of a description of some concepts, and so during that time, feel free to ask anybody else. So we've created a server that's able to respond to URLs, get data from the user, fill it into a page, and respond, right? What else is there to learn about web development? Turns out, a whole lot. So is anybody familiar with HTTP? Or what that might mean? Who has not heard of HTTP? Yeah, okay. So HTTP is basically the language, so to speak, that the client speaks to the server in order to request things from the server. And so far we've been making something called a GET request. And what a GET request is how the client tells the server, please retrieve to me whatever is located at this URL. And so far that's mostly what web browsers do, is that you type in some URL into the address bar, and all you're doing is retrieving something to display onto the page. You're not changing anything, you're not deleting anything. Basically, you're just asking for whatever data already exists, right? And so that's the purpose of a GET request. But there are actually other kinds of requests that happen throughout the web. The most important one is something called a POST request. And what a POST request does is it allows a web browser or any web client to tell a server that change the value or update the value of whatever you're storing at this URL. So this is actually how we are going to create new blog posts. The web browser is going to send a POST request to the web server saying, hey, store this data for me, right? And so this is something that you wouldn't do in a GET request, because a GET request means, hey, give me this data. Everyone get the distinction there? So one is requesting data, or getting data, and one is setting data. And so Flask allows you to easily specify which HTTP method you're using. So GET and POST are called HTTP methods. This is something important to remember because all web frameworks will use this terminology. So yeah. Any questions about HTTP? It'll make, if it's kind of nebulous, it'll make a lot more sense when we actually write the code for it.
Where do you find the variable?
Oh, you have a question about this one? Where did I find the variable post right here that I'm using? So we're using looping, right? So it's kind of very similar to a Python like for loop. So we're saying for post in posts. Posts plural got passed into the template, and then the variable post is actually just every element as we iterate through the list. What is it? So, I mean, I could change this to anything, right? There's no special relation between these two words. It's just that it makes a lot more sense to name every element in a list called posts to be a post, right? But, yeah, this can literally be anything. In fact, it'll probably still work. Yeah, it does work. Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to move on. If you still need to type out that template or you're confused about what's happening, go ahead and ask Sophie or Melanie. So in this blogging engine, what we want people to do is be able to go to the page called Create and hopefully type out a blog post to create, right? So let's go ahead and instead of just returning this is another page, let's do the same thing that we did here. Let's return render template, and we will create this create.html later. For now, let's just type this out here. So we're going to render a new template called create.html, and let's go ahead and create that. Cool. So in your templates directory, you should see two HTML files. Go ahead and open create.html. So, if you've done web development before, another really important part of that is creating forms. So let's go ahead and create a form. In this form, the user will be able to fill out important information for a blog post. Things like the headline and the content, right? So let's create a form that has input boxes for both of those. So luckily, I have autocomplete, so I don't need to type in all these annoying things.
Is that built into the program, or did you manually?
Yeah, Vim comes with this. So. So I think in my plain old Vim might not come with this. I think Mac Vim comes with that built in. But I'm sure you can add it independently. I'm not sure what particular one you'd use. Okay. All right. So we've created a really basic HTML form. How many of you have done HTML but have not seen forms before and need me to walk through what's happening? Okay. So basically, let's go ahead and see this page in action, and then it should make a lot more sense. So actually, if we go to /create, you'll see a form. And so right over here is our input, which is a kind of short thing that allows you to type text. And then on the bottom is our text area, which is a slightly larger text input that allows us to type out an entire blog post or whatever it might be. let's add for clarity, let's go ahead and add a line break between those. Cool. And of course, once the user is done, they probably want to they want to submit the post. So let's go ahead and add a submit button. Cool. So we now have a somewhat working form. Anybody lost or confused still?
Did you change the server file?
No, so right now this is in the create.html. I did change the server file recently. If you recall, I changed this from returning a string to rendering the create.html template. But now that I've created the template, I'm working almost exclusively in this template. So you'll notice that I filled out some mysterious values. Namely, I filled out these things called name equals, right? So in input, name equals title, and then the text area, name is equal to content. What a post request does is it allows you to kind of send the same key value pairs to the server. Similar to how we did query strings, where we said our name is equal to our name is equal to whatever our name was. A post request also has these kind of key value pairs, kind of like a Python dictionary. Sorry, let me change that. Right, so your input should definitely make sure to fill out the name is equal to title, and then your text area, make sure to fill out name is equal to content. Otherwise, the server won't know how to access these the values of this form, right? And we have the submit button on the bottom. And up top, actually, is our most important thing. So my autocomplete filled out some values here. But again, I mentioned that there are mainly two types of HTTP requests. There's the GET, which is when you're requesting data, and POST, when you're setting data. And so which of the two do you think we want to use here when we want to create a new post? Anyone want to venture a guess? Okay, cool. Yeah, just want to make sure you're awake, right? So we want to make a post request. And we do that by specifying that this form method is equal to post. And that way the browser knows when you click submit to make a post request to the server. And the second most important thing here is in this form, we have this action. Action is kind of a weird, like archaic term for URL. And so what we want to do is we want to send a post request to the create URL. That's cool. So if everyone's caught up, go to your web server or go back to your web page, refresh the page so that your changes will occur. And let's actually see what happens if we click create post. Does anybody think it'll work? Okay, good. Because it won't. It'll yell at you. It says, method not allowed. And so, if you actually read it, it's a very useful error message. It says the method post is not allowed for the requested URL. Let's take a look at the code here and try to figure out why it's giving us that error. So, what we've done so far is that all of the routes that we've created are implicitly GET requests. So we're saying that when someone makes a GET request for the URL /create, do this thing. But we haven't told the web server how to handle if somebody makes a POST request to that same /create URL. And so the reason why we're getting this error is that we've told this form right here, hey form, make a POST request to /create, but we haven't updated our server to handle that yet. So let's go ahead and figure out how to do that. So this is a bit of a Flask specific thing. In your app.route annotation as an argument after the /create string, what you want is to say methods equals, and this is a list that contains two strings, the string get in all caps, and the string post in all caps. What this tells Flask to do is it says that, hey Flask, this /create URL, you can handle both get and post HTTP methods. And the cool thing is that actually you can do different things based on which HTTP method the client used. And so we can do something cool like this. So if the request method is get, then you can do something. Otherwise, you can do something else. All right, and I messed up. This is supposed to be a double equals. Oh god, I messed everything up. All right, cool. That should be a real Python file now. Okay, cool. So what have we done here? The request object, which we've used before to get the query string information, also contains a property called .method. We can check that, and we can check whether it was a GET request or a POST request, and do something differently based on what it was. And this is useful because if somebody gets the URL /create, we want to give them a page to compose a post. But when somebody posts to /create, they're clearly giving us some information, and they want us to do something with it. And so if you refresh your page, don't refresh actually, just hit enter in the address bar, and we type some stuff. Now if you hit create, it doesn't complain anymore. It actually runs this part of the if-else statement saying, we'll get to this later. Cool? Any questions about what we've just done or why we're doing it?
Can you go to the create.html page real quick?
Sure. Sorry, that is too small for you to do anything. Sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody confused about this? This is a little bit circular. Like, there's get and there's post, and they're both the same URL. Is anybody confused about that? Cool. So that's cool. We made this post request to /create, and we've created this form that has all these wonderful data for us. Specifically, it has a variable called title, and it has a variable called content that correspond to the post title and the post content, respectively. How do we retrieve that data from the post request and do something useful with it? So we can actually go up into here, right? So remember, if we're in this else statement, that means that it is a post request. Let's see. Actually, just to make that completely explicit, that's what's happening. So we can get the values that are stored in this form that were sent to us by the user using something called request.form. So the request object, again, is like completely magical. It has everything you'll ever need. Specifically, it has something called request.form. And so this request.form is a plain old Python dictionary. And so you can ask it for keys, and it will give you values back. This is slightly different than the query string, which was also a key value pairs, but wasn't a Python dictionary and made you call .get. I don't know why Flask is inconsistent in this way, but it is. So let's retrieve the title value from the form and store it into a variable called title. And let's retrieve the content from the form by requesting the form's content key. And we can prove that this works for real by saying Cool. So we've retrieved the title out of the form, and we're just going to tell the user, hey, you want to create a post called whatever the title was, right? So let's go ahead and do that. And if we hit the submit button, cool, you wanted to create a post called "This is a nice post." Yes, server, I did. Cool. Everyone caught up on this code? Everyone know what's going on? Okay, awesome. So now you've actually leveled up in terms of your web development skills, because you know how to create these posts, or you know how to render user information that the user requests. You know how to take their information in a variety of ways. Namely, you can do it based on the URL they requested. You can do it based on the query string that they passed to as a part of the URL. And you also know how to get it out of a web form in a post request. You can put this all together and do something really cool. We're almost halfway done with our blogging engine. What do you think is next? So we know how to take all of this data from the user and take the post title and the post content, but currently we don't really have any way to save it. And this is actually a really important part of back-end web development, is you have all this user data that the user generates or that you generate about the user, and you need a place to save it. And this is mostly done by saving it into a database. And so if you've taken databases, or you've just generally heard the term, that's what it is. It's just a place that you store data. Learning a real database, though, is kind of outside the scope of this workshop. And I'm sure there will be other workshops that cover it. But for now, I've created a nice fake database for you that is very particular to this workshop. Basically, what it allows you to do is, if you look to the top of the file, on line 5, I've created a DB object, and it's a simple DB object. And so now this database is available to us in any of our functions. So let's go ahead and use it. And I will tell you how to use it. Don't fret if this doesn't make any sense. It's because I made it up, and you'll never need to remember it ever again. Actually, I don't even remember how to use it. Okay. Cool. So in our database, we want to add a post, and let's pass in the title and the content. What this will do is it will save this information so that it's available to us later on. If we weren't doing this, the information disappears as soon as we exit out of this create function. By saving it into a database, we can save it and use it and do something meaningful with it later on. So let's go ahead and do this. We can do the same business over here again. And nothing will be visibly different, but hopefully something will have gotten saved to this database by virtue of having called db.addPost. So we're going to take a small diversion, right? So we're very close. We know how to create forms, send that data over to the server, and save these posts into a database. So the next logical step is, how do you get all these posts back out of the database to show to the user? We're going to get to that in a moment. But as a small diversion, we now have a form that takes you to a page that tells us this useless bit of information. It tells us what we already know, that we wanted to create a post with such and such title. That's not how most web forms work. What most web forms do is that they take your information and then they send you back to some more useful page, right? And so this is a concept called redirects. You've probably, if you've used the web for any amount of time, like been redirected somewhere. Basically, it's when the server tells the browser, hey, I don't really have a page for you, but go to this other URL, it probably does. And we can accomplish that in Flask by doing this. Instead of returning a string, we call the redirect function, and we pass it the URL that we want to send the user's browser to. In this case, we want to redirect them to the home page, otherwise known as /. And we return that value. So this way Flask knows that instead of rendering a page or rendering a string or doing something special, it knows to tell the user's browser, hey, go to this page instead. So let's check this out in action. Let's go back to our create form, fill it in with some nonsense, and if we hit create post, yay, it takes us back to our home page, right? Redirect is a great success. Any questions about what we've done so far? Redirects, HTTP, methods, or this mysterious database to which we've added a post? Cool. Awesome. Either I'm an amazing teacher or I've bored you all. Okay, what are we doing next? Yeah. Yeah. So again, if just to clarify, I think this person also had the same question. Is that if you don't specify like this / whatever, it's implicitly this / means your homepage. There's an implicit / here that like most web browsers just don't display.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically what it was.
Hey, Sri, where did you get the ad post from? Is that a Flask thing?
No, I made it up.
Okay.
So this db.addpost, don't worry about it. I made it up. It's a fake database. No other database will have something that looks like this.
Oh.
I just didn't want to teach you guys real databases because that's outside of the scope of this. Yeah, it's magic. Imagine that all databases had a function that does exactly what you want it to do. Cool. Any other questions? Confusions?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
What database technology are you using?
I'm using a Python dictionary. Shh, don't tell it. I'm using very advanced database technology.
Okay. Okay.
No, this database.addpost really just puts stuff into a Python dictionary.
Okay.
I revealed my trick. All right. So right now we actually have this like weird hard-coded posts, and if you go to the home page, you'll have a web page that displays all of these hard-coded posts, right? But we've gone through all this trouble of creating a page that allows us to create posts. So why don't we actually get the posts that we've created and put them onto the page? I'm going to show you how to do that. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of this hard-coded list, we're going to use another magic database function that I've created for you called db.getPosts. And this will get all the posts that we've created before. Now, we're going to have to change our template a bit because the posts that are in the database aren't just plain old strings. They're actually Python dictionaries that have a key called title and a key called content. So if you look at our homepage template right now, sorry, question?
No.
Oh, okay. Sleeve rolling? Good. So if you look at our template right now, we're actually just printing out wholesale the variable post. And actually, it's cool. Let's figure out what will happen if we do that. We have something right now. We have nothing right now because we restarted the server. And let's create some stuff. Create a post. Okay, cool. So now there's one more item on the page than we had before, but it's not exactly the item that we expect. Namely, it's a string representation of a Python dictionary, right? So let's figure out how to actually make this into something useful. Ideally, if you've checked out most people's blogs, it'll be a list of links to individual posts, and the link text will be the post title. So let's try to do something similar to that. But let's actually look for a minute about what the post looked like. The post has an ID, which is just some random number identifier. It has the title, which is the title that I filled in, and the content, which is my beautiful prose that I've filled in here. So we can access those values inside our template. Let's go ahead and do that. So instead of printing out just the variable post, let's create, for every post, let's create a list item as before, but let's create a link instead, right? This link, the link text, is going to be the post's dot title, right? And this makes sense. You want the link text to be whatever title we've created. And we can access that using this dot notation here. And then let's do something, this is slightly mysterious, but let's make it link to /post/ and the post's ID. Okay, so I'll let this sit up here for a moment so people are caught up on what's happening. Cool. Anyone need a little bit more time to copy down this template? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. Couple more minutes. In the meantime, anybody confused as to what's happening?
Does anyone need to catch up?
Is anyone late? Yeah. Is anyone late and needs to catch up? I like this guy here. He's like going completely analog style.
Old-fashioned.
Yeah, old-fashioned. That's cool. Yes, also, just as a PSA, all of this code, step by step, is available for you later on if you go to this particular URL. And so you'll see each of the steps that we've gone through so far. In fact, we're kind of somewhere here. And it'll have all the code that we created along with some useful hints. So if you want to look back on this when you're like hacking at home, come check this out. This link is on the Facebook event wall. Cool. So, people who are still transcribing this, are you done? Who needs more time to copy down this template? Okay. I'll switch back to this, but we'll move on. So, let's refresh our page here. Oh, that's pretty neat. So we changed this template, and so instead of just this like ugly Python dictionary-looking thing onto our page, we have a sensible-looking link, and the link is astafast. And the link URL, if you observe very carefully here, is /post/0, and 0 is the post ID. Let's be brave adventurers here and click the link. And due to my amazing foresight, remember when I made you create this like route here that handles this, where people can request /post/anything, and it will tell you what post you requested? Well, we just made use of that feature right now. So that's kind of cool. Yay. And I bet if we were to go to /create and create another thing, yeah, okay, that's a good title. Yeah, we have another thing, and this is /post/1. Neat. All right, so we have like a kind of working blog system now, but it doesn't actually tell us what the blogs say. You can stop right here if you don't want anyone to read your things, but we will continue. Yeah, just dear diary. Problem is you won't be able to read it. Yeah. Okay. So, let's figure this out. Ideal behavior. What should appear when I go to this link? Anybody who wants to tell me?
The content of your post?
Yes, thank you. helpful
Oh.
shill.
Great.
Okay, so
Learned to translate
that's cool. So in this function right here, when somebody requests for a particular post ID, we want to get that particular post back and render it back onto the page to show us what we've written. And because of our amazing database, it has such a function called db.getPost. And no, that was get posts. That gets all of them. So into here we pass in a post ID. Slight change though. This is what it would logically look like. But the thing is that when somebody's remember that this is a number for now, but it doesn't have to be a number. It can be literally anything. It can be this. So we want to get a post with a particular number ID. And so what we want to do is we want to cast this into an int. Hopefully you are familiar with this. Basically, it just takes a string and it turns it into a number if it's a number. If it's not a number, our server will crash, but don't tell anyone that. So doing db.getPosts with a particular post ID, we get the post back, and that's cool. Let's pass in the post here and see what happens. In fact, okay, that's nice. You know what? We're running a bit early, so let's fill in some time by creating a link here to the create page, so I don't have to keep typing it.
Oh, are we all doing that?
You can if you want, and you're OCD like
Yeah.
me. Otherwise, you can't. You don't have to.
Wait, no.
Oh, okay, fine.
Okay, now I'm
Yeah. All right. This is just to satisfy me and my bizarre desires. All right. So, create this post. Yay. All right, let's click this. Yay, okay, so now you see this post object back. So guess what is the next order of business? Let's pretty this up and make it look like something useful. You can keep it like this. So we're going to actually pull a similar gimmick to what we did earlier. Basically, we're going to change this from a regular plain old string to a new template. So let's go ahead and change this to return render template. And let's call this post.html because this is an individual post. And of course, this post.html template needs access to this variable. So we'll pass that shit in. Okay, so time to create such a template. Cool. Let's restart our server. Alright, cool. So we have a fresh new template for us to fill in any way we please. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a headline that has our post title, right? And in a paragraph element, let's put our post's content. Yeah, makes sense. This is what a page should look like, right? And let's see what goes on. Oh, okay. And just for the user's sake, because we care about them, we'll add a link back to home, right? So they don't have to go into their address bars. Cool. Who has copied that, or who needs more time to copy down this template? Who doesn't understand what is happening in this template? You should by now. Cool. Everyone good? Everyone caught up? Wonderful. So let's go ahead and create a post. This is the best blogging engine in the universe. Okay. Oh, all right. Let's create a post that says that. Oh, that's great. Let's click this. Oh, okay. Whoops. Anticlimactic click. Bam. All right. Let's go back home because we can. How's the festival? Okay. All right, let's see what's. Yay! All right, wonderful. So we now have a working blogging engine. You've gone all the way from creating a plain old server that has 1 or 2 pages to a blogging engine that has infinite pages, provided you have infinite amounts of time to write all those posts. Yeah, okay, that's great. So for some reason we allotted until 9:30, but we're technically done. So for the rest of this time, I can go into next steps. If you like what you've done today and you feel really proud because you made something useful, I would feel proud too. And you want to find out what more you can do, I'm happy to talk about that. If anybody's lost about what we've done so far, feel free to ask me questions. Anybody have any questions, either about what's next or what we've done so far? Yeah.
So can you actually make this work on like someone else's server instead of running it off your computer?
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually the logical next step. Is that right now? Okay, cool. We have a Python program on my server where I can type out text and stuff. That's cool. Well, what does this do that Notepad can't? Right. Well, the cool thing is that you can put this on a public-facing server so that other people from the internet can come and access it. And so the way that you do that is you have to, like, it's kind of complicated and it's kind of outside of the scope, but you can find a hosting provider that will allow you to run Python programs. And you upload this server.py, and once it's running, so far we have been going to localhost port 5000, and what localhost means is my own local computer, right? Other people from the internet can't access it. But so what you really want is to run it on a server and then give that server a domain name. So then it can be something like bestbloginuniverse.com, port 5000, and then everybody can come visit it, right? If we probably go to this, it's not gonna work. Okay, that doesn't work. So you can go buy that domain name and it'll work. It's kind of complicated. It's like you have to buy the domain name, you have to set up a server, you have to run this Python script on that server, and stuff like that. But it's relatively straightforward if you put the time into figuring it out. Yeah, someone buy bestbloginuniverse.com right now. I think it's a worthwhile investment. Okay, so there are a couple more things that we didn't cover today. Biggest thing is that, okay, we've done a lot of HTML, but some of you might be kind of front-end designers, so you might be interested in CSS. I haven't taught you how to style your web pages, and the reason is because you don't use templating for CSS. Usually your CSS files, you type them out, and then those are static. They never change. They don't depend on any particular logic, right? And so to serve images, CSS files, JavaScript files, videos, whatever, there's a different way that you can do it. You can create a directory called public, I believe. Is that right? You know.
I can check.
And then you can store random stuff in public, and then Flask knows that when I request for localhost /public/whatever, it will work. Actually, let me figure out if that will work.
I was using static.
Static? Oh. Okay, it's static. I lied. Yeah, anyway, so if you put random stuff in here, then it should be available via /static/ whatever. And so you can serve images, you can serve CSS files, whatever, stuff like that. Also, next important thing to know is that I've actually taught you a kind of old-fashioned way of doing things, in that everything is still relevant. However, if you go to like Facebook or you go to Twitter or whatever cool kids are using these days, MySpace, it's back, guys. If you go to that, you'll notice the page actually never refreshes. In fact, let's go to this. I can click this, and like there was no like blinky thing that like let me know that the page refreshed, as opposed to this, where I had this annoying blinky thing and also an error message that was completely avoidable because my server wasn't running. But yeah, anyway, so you'll notice our pages refreshes, theirs don't, and the reason is because there's something called Ajax. What Ajax allows is that instead of requesting the page and reloading the page, you can, in JavaScript, request information and get that kind of on the side without having to reload the page, and then update your page dynamically using JavaScript based on what the server returns. And so that actually doesn't require you to change any of your server-side code. Your server-side code remains exactly the same. It's just that you need to write JavaScript code that requests the pages, requests the URLs via Ajax. That's kind of also outside of the scope of things here. There might be a front-end JavaScript workshop that covers that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Just things like to remember as you go on and build things. Ajax, serving static files. Also, today we've been using Flask, and Flask is great because it provides many magical things. It has a magical request object that has everything we could desire for the purposes of this workshop. But it's not actually particularly used in the real world because it's kind of inefficient. It's kind of used for people who are just getting started. So some things that you might want to look into as you progress are more heavy web frameworks, such as Django, which is also in Python, Ruby on Rails, which is super popular and is written and used by people who write in the Ruby language. And then there's like Node.js, which some of you might have heard of. If you really like JavaScript and you want to write all your server-side code in JavaScript, there's Node. And there's basically web frameworks, like dozens of web frameworks for every possible language. So if you for some reason don't like Python and you really love Perl, you could write a web server in that. But yeah, other than that, that's all I have for you. So you guys get to head out early. Thank you for coming. I look forward to reading all your blog posts on the internet soon. Cool. Thanks, guys.